is the end of January. I want to share something with you that may blow your theology or even your view of life. Did you know that actually the resources that you have, that means the money that you have, the possessions that you have, your time and your talent actually have a particular use. Now, I was looking today at Ephesians chapter 4, verse number 28. Paul says, listen to this. He says, he who listens must steal no more, but rather he must labor, performing with his own hands what is good, so that he will have something to share with those who have need. So here is Paul giving an exhortation to individuals who have been what we would call involved in a bad lifestyle. Now, what he is sharing concerning this matter is this. He says, the resources that you do, the work that you are involved in, the profession, the vocation, is for a purpose. Now, many people have the idea that it is my money and I can do with as I will. Well, that's a very, very selfish view of the situation. We have financial advisors right now. I mean, this is the time of tax season and also RRSP season in my country of Canada. And the financial advisor saying, well, you got to put away so much money to be able to retire. And so people squirrel away this money and they think that they deserve it. And there's this mentality that it's all about me and that I am going to, use this money for my particular resources, not recognizing that there is a greater purpose for our lives. It's not all about us. In fact, Jesus put it this way: people will know that you are my disciples by the way that you love one another. That means that there needs to be some practical expression. Now, not that long ago, about maybe 10 years ago, a well-known entrepreneur and billionaire whose name was Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett actually has been living in the same house he bought for about $38,000 way back in the 50s. And he's been living in the same house. He is, one of the world's richest men. And when he said he had an interview with MSBC, or MSBC. And they said, so where did you learn all these principles? He said, well, my dad. He said, my dad was an extremely old generation thinker. He believed that we were here for a greater purpose. And he says, I have tried to, fulfill my dad's legacy, and that is being generous. He says, I have been, greatly blessed. And he says, in turn, I want to bless others. And he also said that the reason why he gave that $34 billion is he could never, ever spend it. So he says, I have learned the incredible act of generosity. Some people have heard of John D. Rockefeller. Well, John D. Rockefeller, for many, many years, was the richest man in all of America. In fact, at one time, he owned 90% of the oil industry in, of course, United States. When he was 53 years old, he had a crisis. And that crisis was that the doctor came to him and said, Mr. Rockefeller, you have 6 months to live. This particular disease is going to take your life in 6 months. Now, John D. Rockefeller, many people don't know, was a man of faith. And so John D. came to a conclusion. He said, I have squirreled all this money away, and I have been very, very selfish. So after a long period of time, he sat down and he went to his financial advisors and said, we've got to do something, significant. And so he, of course, formed the John D. Rockefeller. And the whole aim was to help with education, help with the arts, help with, health, and all these different projects. And of course, he not only survived, because as soon as he started being generous, he started feeling better. And he lived well into his 90s. And many, many times they asked him, why did you do this? He said, because God told me to do it. And he also said, because I realized that all the resources that I had was for the benefits of others. He says, it wasn't about me anymore. It was about touching others. That was the same idea that William Booth was all about when he went into the streets of London back in the 19th century. He saw a great need. And he said, we've got to do something about this. Now, he had, of course, the eternal perspective, which was, of course, Jesus said in Matthew chapter 25, he says, when you do it to the least of these, you are doing it to me. Mother Teresa was asked way back in the 90s, not long after she won the Nobel Prize. They said, how can you minister to the unfortunate, the lepers in Calcutta? And she said, I look at each one, at their face, as Jesus in his distressing disguise. So there is a responsibility that we have, of course, for others, to help others, not only, generously with our resources, but with our time and with our talent as well. So the simple fact is, Paul is saying, listen, you must examine your mindset. To those who were thieves, he said, listen, what you need to do is you need to abandon that terrible lifestyle, and you need to begin to work for the benefit of others when there is a need. And that is really an important aspect of our Christianity. Many of the different organizations, for example, in the city in which I currently operate, Hope Mission, saw the need and has become one of the main distributors of help in the city of Edmonton. Same with the mustard seed. Same with, Salvation Army around the world. They see a social need. And we do have a responsibility as Christians for social needs, social action. That is absolutely essential as well. It doesn't mean that we turn everything to the social gospel. There is the salvation aspect of it. Now, you ask many of the billionaires who are, currently operating, the obligarchs as they're called, many of them recognize a simple principle. The principle is, if you sow goodness, goodness comes back to you. If you sow love, love comes back to you. That is actually an eternal principle. Now, many of those who are not Christians and don't have any background still recognize that. Now, there is a man whose name is, of course, John Maxwell. John Maxwell is a very well-known speaker to the corporate world. He started off as a pastor, and but he continually tells corporate leaders, you've got to have a social arm to your business. You need to understand that you can use your business for the benefits of others. And many in the corporate world have recognized that. For example, Ronald McDonald House. McDonald's, of course, has these special units that are designed to help people who need help. My wife and I once or twice accessed Ronald McDonald House in both Vancouver and in Edmonton when we had some medical problems. And we were absolutely glad that they had these facilities available because we were coming from out of town and we didn't have any place to, hang our hat and to be able to minister while our daughter was going through medical treatment. So the simple fact is we were glad, and we're glad that corporations have seen that. All of that has to do with a divine principle. The divine principle is whatever you sow, you reap. And so it is important to recognize that not only do we have stewardship over our resources, but we also have stewardship over our time and our talents. When was the last time you used your talent to help others? Years ago, there was a fella in my church. His name was John. And John had a talent for, of course, automotives. And he was a mechanic. And so John, his shtick was the fact that You could go to him and ask him to fix your car, and you offered him money, and you know what? He wouldn't take it. The reason was he said, God gave me this talent to be able to help people in mechanics. And he says, I don't have a lot of money, but this I can do. Well, I want to tell you something. When I did his funeral, there were hundreds of people there, and many of them said, John did this and that. John understood that his talent and his abilities were under the hand of God, and he used it well, and it became a testimony to his community. So I'm just simply reminding you that whatever your talent is, whatever your resources are, whatever your time is, give it to others. Use it wisely, but give it to others. And you will see God's blessing in every area of your life. A little thought for you today. My name is Robert Dean Steele. Thank you so much for joining me today, and have yourself a great and godly day.